Geopolitics and Empire is joined by Russell Texas Bentley, who's an accredited war correspondent and human aid volunteer in the Donetsk People's Republic. He's been in Donbass since 2014, helping defend ethnic Russian civilians from attacks by the Ukrainian army and neo-Nazi volunteer battalions. He's also co-founder and vice president of Donbass Humanitarian Aid. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Texas.
Thank you, brother. I'm glad to be on your show, man. I've heard a lot of good things about you.
Same here. I've been following your stuff for quite a while now, and it's good to finally catch up with you. And there's some of my listeners have suggested that your views regarding Russia and the special military operation may have become a little more nuanced. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, but also I'd like to get your thoughts on the Great Reset, which sort of serves as a context and background to everything going on. But before getting into Ukraine, Russia, NATO, and so forth, I want to talk about America. You know, we're both Americans. You're from Texas. I'm from Illinois, but it seems we both became disillusioned with the American empire. We both fled the U.S. I ended up in Mexico, you in Donbass, and I've seen America since the early 2000s decline economically, degenerate culturally, and become totalitarian. And so what's been your experience and what's your view on the state of the empire and the American Republic?
Well, I was born in Austin, Texas in 1960. So I remember back when America was still, if not living up to its image as, the shining light on the hill, whatever, at least, my granddad came back from the Second World War. He fought German Nazis in Europe. He was a tank commander. He came back. He got himself a college degree on the GI Bill, which means he didn't have to pay for it. He started selling life insurance, made enough money working by himself that he could raise a family, a son and a daughter, put them both through college. His wife didn't work. He had a car. She had a car. It was, as close to the American dream as it gets. He had a little farm out in the country. He had a pretty cool house in North Dallas with a swimming pool and, barbecues on the weekends and like that, and that was the age in the 60s. Everybody was in pretty good shape. Of course, that was the time of the civil rights movement. That was the time of the Vietnam War, and I saw that too. And I actually lived in Dallas in 1963, which yesterday was the anniversary of the murder of JFK in Dallas. And I remember it even as a kid of 3.5 years old, because, that kind of stuff sticks with you. And I my whole life, I've remembered what the front page of the Dallas Morning Herald was, the next day. And it showed like the little dots coming down from the school depository to the car, and it was like something that I always wondered about, And then when I got older in my 30s and I had the time and money to be able to, educate myself on things that I was interested in, the JFK assassination is one of the things that I educated myself on. And I didn't go to college for it, but I'd say that my expertise on that subject is at a PhD level for sure, And from there, when I was in the U.S. Army in the 80s, I was in Louisiana my last year, 1984, and I almost ended up invading Grenada, with the 82nd Airborne. We were the reserve troops. If they had a hard time, we were flying in next. And so I've always had, I always love to read. I'm self-educated. To be honest, the last full year of school that I went to was the 7th grade, and I got a GED, went to school, went to college actually when I was in prison for weed smuggling, and I got a 4.0 average, so my self-education seems to have worked pretty well, in fact, American education system these days is diseducation, brainwashing, and suppression of critical thinking. So growing up, I didn't watch TV. I didn't go to school. I taught myself, and that gave me a different perspective. You know, I mean, 12 years old, I was going to the library. That was like 72. It was still the Vietnam War, bro. I'm reading books by Ho Chi Minh and Che Guevara, and I'm like, it looks like these are the good guys, you know? When Ho Chi Minh says we're fighting against, you know, invaders that came from another country with their army to enslave us. And I'm like, well, you know, if, you know, the Mexicans came to invade Texas, we'd fight against them too, you know? And so, and, you know, since 1980, since Reagan came in, you know, it was a downhill slope. I mean, of course, you know, the other presidents before Reagan were not saints or idealistic. I mean, I would say that JFK was the last good or not bad, you know, not truly evil criminal American president.
I've got the same view that JFK was the last real president, and I've heard you mention before as well. You know, 9/11. I'm of the view that that was an inside
that was
job.
Dude, it's the litmus test. Anyone that thinks that the U.S. government didn't do it is either an idiot or a liar or both, and that's the end of that.
I'm going all the way up. I'm going all the way up. I'm letting go in my heart of everything that holds me down. No, no. Look up to the sky and I got this relief inside. Then there's no need to hide. I'm going all the way up. I'm going all the way up. I'm letting go in my heart of everything that holds me down. No, no.
Also, if you need health insurance that covers you wherever you may roam, check out my friend James Guzman's Borderless Health Insurance. One of the great things about living internationally is saving money on health care, but private care overseas can be expensive. Go to borderlesshealthinsurance.com to watch a short presentation on expat and digital nomad healthcare and sign up for a free consultation to review your options.
And then you learn about the Federal Reserve, 9/11, the empire, and it's just like, and then it's starting, you know, for example, the Iraq War based on a lie of WMDs, and then 1 to 2 million Iraqis dead for nothing, and then you're just wondering,
every one of them a human being with a soul, you know. And you know, so I mean, so I saw Grenada, dude. I saw Yugoslavia, you know. I saw Iraq 1 and Iraq 2, you know. I saw Syria. I saw Libya, dude. I really admired Muammar Gaddafi a lot, you know, and a lot of people thought, oh, he's like some crazy dude that rides camels and dresses in robes and stuff like that, lives in a tent. But I knew, you know, I had actually looked it up and seen that Libya had the highest quality of life in all of Africa, even higher than some European countries, you know. And that was because they had oil, but their government shared that treasure with the people. It wasn't like just the oligarch 1%, like in Saudi Arabia or in America or something like that, you know, where the parasite class sucks it all off and leaves nothing for the people. Muammar Gaddafi was a great leader, you know, in many ways. And he supported some causes like the Irish Republican movement that I also highly support, you know. So I admired him. After he was murdered and the state of Libya was destroyed, you know, I was completely fed up. In fact, I had a girlfriend in Austin at the time, and outside of her apartments, she had a big billboard of the U.S. Marines, join the Marines for honor, for country. And it just used to piss me off every time I'd, leave her house, I'd see that sign. And so one night I took some mountain climbing gear. Like right before dawn, I climbed up, 15 meters up this billboard, wrote "fuck NATO" in 6-foot tall letters, dude. And it was up there for more than a week, and 50,000 cars drove by it every day, so that was like my statement. And I felt like at least I did something. But when I saw what started happening in the Maidan, and then directly after that, the absolute war crimes of the Ukrainian army against the civilians, going into eastern Ukraine, and the people there stopping them with their hands in front of a tank or a BMP and getting shot or getting run over, the slaughter in Odessa. It's still a, unsolved crime, even though there's video of the people that were doing it,
Yeah,
the attacks in Lugansk, all that stuff. Once those war crimes started, I'm like, I cannot live with myself if I don't do something about this.
Yeah, that was my next question. As you're talking about, you see this just trajectory of U.S. empire, as you mentioned, in 20th century, and then Iraq and Afghanistan, and then 2011 Libya and Syria at that time. They go in, and then Ukraine. And just real quick, I mean, for probably most people listening, maybe not all, but they're familiar with the background context to today's Ukraine situation. There was the 2004 orange color revolution by the West, and then they struck again a decade later in 2014 with the coup, as you're describing, and then they effectively made Kiev a puppet regime, and then proceeded to use it as a battering ram against Russia with the express purpose to decolonize, dismember, and defang the Russian bear. In a nutshell, did I get it mostly right? Is that what's going on?
That's exactly what happened, bro. Exactly. And you know what? And it is verbatim what the German Nazi Hitler's Plan Ost was, to destroy Russia as a country, to exterminate or enslave the people, and to go in there and, rob and rape the resources. And really, I have to say, bro, I call, the US, EU, NATO, I call them the Fourth Reich, dude. And it's not rhetoric, and it's not an exaggeration. It's, it's calling things by their right name. Really.
I would agree with you. I mean, I'm not a leftist or communist. I don't have sympathies to socialism, but I have been for 20 years calling the West the Fourth Reich, the North Atlantic terrorist organization, and Nazism is the ideology I mean, the EU is a Nazi construct, basically. It's got its roots. Brussels has its roots in Dr. Rath wrote a great book on how a lot of the Nazis just were involved in the founding of the EU, and then Operation Paperclip, the US integrated a lot of Nazis, and so that's what's going on. And then I guess fast forwarding, a lot of people are familiar with the history, and if they're not, they can go look that up. But just coming to February of this year, Russia launched the special military operation. I viewed it, and still tend to view it, as a self-defense against NATO and the West, because, as we mentioned, the goal, we've got the RAND white papers and so many Atlantic articles talking about just dismembering, balkanizing, divide and conquer of Russia. And so I kind of viewed what Russia did was a sort of preemptive self-defense. How do you view the special military operation and how it's been going for Russia?
Well, it was absolutely a self-defense mechanism. The Russians have penetrated the Ukrainian political, military, intelligence sectors completely. They know everything that the Ukrops and their Western masters, primarily U.S., are doing in Kiev. And the first most important thing is that, since 2014, the Ukrainian government doesn't exist. It is a absolute puppet extension of, the most fascist part, deep state of the U.S. government. I mean, Poroshenko. I mean, as it's so obvious. Victoria Nuland, the intercepted phone call where she said "fuck the EU," and it's so stupid. And it's like, I mean, it's even more than stupid. It's like silly that all the Western media and stuff. They're like, oh, she said "f the EU," woo-hoo, get there, and they miss the whole point of that phone call, that publication of that intercepted phone call, which was that every single person, she was talking to Jeffrey Pyatt, the U.S. ambassador, and she's like Undersecretary of State Department, under Hillary Clinton's State Department back 2014. Every person that she told Pyatt, she wanted in specific positions of the Ukrainian government, every single one of them ended up in exactly those positions. I mean, so it's like, you talk about democracy, you talk about elections, you talk about, the people having a say in what their country does. That has nothing to do with Ukraine. I mean, I don't know about before 2014, but, after 2014, it has exactly zero to do with it, and so it's a puppet, just regime, they do. And I mean, all the most hideous, beyond imagination, hideous crimes that have been committed in Ukraine have been not just with the permission, but at the direction of the people in the United States who control Kiev now. And dude, that's the most important message I can get out to Westerners, and particularly Americans. What they have done around the world to other people, they are now going to do to you at home in the United States. And that's it, dude. I mean, and since 1980, it went downhill. After 2000, it fell off the cliff, dude. And it's like, I see you have the copy of the U.S. Constitution there, the little pocket copy.
I don't know if it's in the video, but it's the Bill of Rights, and just to what you were saying, I was living in Kazakhstan from 2017 to 2020, working technically for Nursultan Nazarbayev, and I saw the color revolution apparatus with my own eyes. One of my students at the school, she participated in a after school extracurricular activity with a local NGO. I forget its name right now, but then I looked it up. She actually brought me. She did an essay. She showed me a certificate in Russian, and at the bottom in Cyrillic in Russian, it said it was awarded by the National Endowment for Democracy. And then I go to the NGO, and it's like U.S. sponsored by USAID, Open Society. And then I tell my supervisors at the school, like, as an American, I'm concerned for Kazakhstan. America is all about liberty, democracy, and sovereignty. Well, I don't, just it's American to warn Kazakhstan about this, and America has no business overthrowing Kazakhstan. And then I had in the local city, the head of the internal security take me out to lunch. I even had the Kazakh KNB, that's their like CIA. They were interested in me, and then we saw earlier this year in January there was what could have been a color revolution attempt in Kazakhstan, and I've been warning
certainly
them.
Was, of course.
Yeah, since 2017, I've been warning them, and then we saw they're trying to take out Imran Khan in Pakistan, and so this empire is insane. But just sort of to your point, the global war on terror we had, and then as you're saying now, this is one of my other concerns: the police state coming back home, the domestic war on terror. They're trying to now establish, anyone who's conservative or patriotic or left, right, whatever. They're now being called extremists. It's just as you say. I mean, how do you see them coming after us in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, first of all, the first time I voted for a U.S. president was in 1988, after I came back from Germany in the Army. And I voted for Ron Paul in the Libertarian Party, 1988, dude. The last time I voted was in 2000, and I voted for Ralph Nader in the Green Party. So I mean, and one thing that the libertarians got right was that they always said, you know, it's not a linear thing from left to right. It's circular. And you can go so far left that you become right and vice versa. You know, and for me, I'm a social libertarian. You know, economically, I'm a communist. You know, and I mean, and I'm a real communist, dude. But what I see now is that the fascism, bro. Benito Mussolini supposedly once said, and it doesn't matter whether he said it or not because it's absolutely true, whoever said it, that fascism would better be called corporatism because it is the merger of state and corporate power. And if that ain't exactly what they have in the United States today, then they don't have anything there, dude, because that is exactly. The government works for the oligarchs and the corporations. I mean, you know, you look at Hunter Biden, dude, I did 5 years for smuggling weed, and Hunter Biden's done enough crimes to have, you know, 1 million years. And yet he walks around, you know, his degenerate, demented dad is the president, you know, and so he's untouchable because he's an oligarch, because he's one of the 1%ers, you know. I mean, not that he's really like one of the dudes pulling the strings or Biden either, but they're the ones that have done the work for the guys pulling the strings the whole time. And really for a long time, you know, I always thought, you know, the stuff about the Federal Reserve, you know, the Jews, you know, it's like, I don't even want to care about that. I got other more specific things that I know about that I feel I can do something about. But, you know, the further it goes along, I mean, and I'm not anti-Semitic in any way. I have nothing against Jewish people. But you know what? I have something against Zionists and Pharisees, you know, and it's the same with Israel or Russia or the United States or Canada or China. It's the goddamn billionaires, dude. That's the parasite class, and those are the enemies of the future of humanity. They see us as livestock as long as we're profitable, but as soon as we become troublesome or unprofitable, they see us as insects to be exterminated.
Or for us to be eating insects. I think what we're talking about, like the latest manifestation, the most visual aspect of sort of these elites seems to be the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, you know, Corporate Commander Klaus Schwab, as I call him. And, just to get your thoughts on that, we were talking about how, you know, you're banned on a number of platforms, PayPal, I am as well. We were talking about Alina Lip, whose, you know, parents recently had their accounts shut off. And it's like this social credit system, this algorithm ghetto, this cashless society. Like it's this technocratic, you know, as you said, corporatism, technocratic future that they want to put the whole world under. And if you don't think the way that they think, if you step out of line, they just shut you off, and you literally cannot, you know, buy or sell. Any thoughts on that, as well as where, for example, where is Russia and the East on that? Because I see, when it comes to geopolitics, we see genuine conflict between Russia and China and the West, you know, other countries. And then at times, I'm wondering why Russia seems, they're battling the West, yet implement.
And they're still selling them oil and gas.
Well, that too, but also they implement some of these biosecurity, technocratic measures in Russia, QR codes, vaccine passports, and that sort of thing. So, I mean, have you ever thought about that? It's like, I'm trying to square this.
Of course I have, bro. Yeah. Of course I have. And, and especially, it's been on everybody's mind since the special operation started. But for me, it's like this, and I'm proud to be a Russian citizen. I'm prouder to be a citizen of the DPR, because the people of Donbass, dude, there's an old poster from 1920, right at the end of the Russian Civil War, between the white monarchist and the red Bolshevik armies that was fought here in Donbass primarily, and including a 50,000 soldier expeditionary force that was sent by the U.S., France, Britain to come here and help the whites back then. And this poster from 1920, it says, Donbass serce Russia. Donbass is the heart of Russia. And it shows like a map going all the way up to St. Petersburg and all the way out to Samara and stuff, Kiev down to Crimea and all that. And Donbass is the heart, and the veins go out. The people here were the most staunchly communist and still are to this day of not just, and remember this poster, it said the heart of Russia, not the heart of Ukraine, not even the Soviet Union. It said the heart of Russia, so, Ukraine is a fake state, and anyone that says, it's like this. Google Maps, for instance, in the area that's under the control of the Donetsk People's Republic, Ukraine changed some of the names of the towns, like Krasny Armeysky, the town of the Red Army, and they changed it to something like, I don't know, Banderistan or something, They changed the name on Google Maps. And so if you try and look up Krasny Armeysky on Google Maps, you won't find it. But it doesn't matter what some dude in Kiev or Google Maps calls the town. It matters what the people who live in that town call it. They're the ones that have the say, and they're not asking anybody else what's the name of their own town, So the point is that the Russians had to defend themselves. It was a total puppet government that was controlled by their deadly enemies, their mortal enemies. NATO, the reason of NATO, as it was said years ago, was to keep the United States in Europe, to keep the Germans down, and to destroy Russia, something like that, and that's what they've been doing this whole time. Dude, they had dozens, like more than 12 biological weapons laboratories that they were working in Ukraine. Ukrainians had no oversight. They had no say. They couldn't even go in. The dudes that were working there had diplomatic immunity, probably working under, fake names and everything like that. And the Russians had taken some of those and they got the evidence. They were studying how to use migratory birds as vectors for spreading disease. They were studying how to add gain of function to diseases so that they would particularly be effective against Slavic DNA, which is Russian and also Ukrainian DNA.
That was one of my questions. I've interviewed the Bulgarian journalist Dilyana Gaitan-Zayeva, and I was the first to interview Francis Boyle back in January 2020 to talk about corona as a bioweapon. And it seems like, sadly, it seems the West has managed the information war, and they've been able to brush the biolabs story under the rug because, as you say, the Russian MOD, Russian government have been showing all these documents about what you're talking about, but it's just not getting play in the Western media. And they have this power with the media, just like it doesn't exist. It's not an issue. And the Russians try to bring it up at the UN. It keeps getting denied, and they can't get anywhere with this biolab information. What's your take on that?
Well, and you know what? It is a fact that the West is winning the information war. Their propaganda is it's not that much better than the Russians, but the problem is, and this is a real problem that Western people have to face up to and take their responsibility for. The problem is that the number of people in the West who are so stupid and so lazy that, first of all, they can't even tell, truth from bullshit. And second of all, don't even really care as long as it doesn't affect them personally. That's the huge advantage that, the West has in the propaganda war. It's that most people these days are really, really stupid. I mean, and that's just a sad fact, and I hate to see it, but, you look on YouTube, you see, some dude on Santa Monica Beach with a map of the world, and he's like, hey, where's Ukraine? And they point to Australia or something, You ask them, it's like, who's the vice president? They don't even know. I mean, it's when people are that stupid, it's like this, dude. Okay, there's two things about Westerners, but particularly Americans. The first one is this, is that they've gotten to a point where the truth doesn't even really matter. The social contract for most people in the West, and especially in America, and I'm talking about 90%. I'll pretend to believe your bullshit if you pretend to believe mine. And think about that for a second. So it's like, oh, hi, how you doing? Oh, fine, And it's like, nobody gives a shit about the truth. The basis of morality is respect for the truth.
Yeah.
Reality. To be able, and of course the education system has been, laser beam focused on crushing the ability for people that go through it to critically think, to ask questions, to think, not just from logic, which is essential, but also from their heart, and just like, what if it was me in that situation, in either situation? What if I was the little kid being bombed in the school or the park here in Donetsk? Or, it's like with the chemical weapons things in Syria, how stupid do you have to be to believe that Assad would bomb his own people with prohibited chemical weapons on the day when the UN chemical weapons inspectors, anyone that believes that is stupider than they think that Assad would have to be in order to do something like that, dude. So it's just tragic. But the thing about the information war, Russia is very honorably and very with high moral standards, they're trying to win the information war with the truth. And the truth is one of our most important weapons, not one of our most powerful weapons, but one of our most important, in the fact that we can't start, slinging bullshit like the West does, just, saying the opposite of the truth. Bro, since March, there's been two specific cases. I know there's many more, but two specific cases that I personally have addressed, where March 14th, the UCROP shot a Tochka U. It got shot down over Donbass Center City. It had cassette cluster mines. It killed 24 people on University Boulevard here in Donetsk. There was a photograph taken that day, bodies laying in the street, a man weeping with his face in his hands over his wife who'd just been murdered by this terrorist attack. La Stampa, one of the oldest and main newspapers in Italy, ran it on the upper fold front page the next day. The carnage, and they don't say, this is the Russians bombing Kiev. They don't, but they imply, so some idiot that doesn't read the story and he looks at it and he sees this picture and it was the opposite of the truth, bro. It was Ukrainian terrorist attack on civilians. They run the picture and imply to, when people are like, yeah, dude, I saw the picture of all those poor civilians the Russians killed. A month later, New York Post, which is kind of a, yellow journalism, whatever, gossip rag or whatever, but, mega thousands of subscribers, if not millions. And they showed a picture of an apartment building that got hit in Donetsk, in my neighborhood. and it was a heavy missile, probably a hurricane, maybe a Smersh, and it blew off like half of the top 3 floors of the apartment building. It was in my neighborhood, a couple of miles from my house. And the New York Post puts this photo the next day. And again, they're not paying the photographers. They're stealing the photo. They don't credit the photographers. They don't pay them nothing. They just steal it off the internet, and then use it for reverse propaganda. And their headline was, Russia continues to bomb Ukrainian cities.
And I want to get your thoughts as well on the latest, switching from information war to the war on the ground. I was seeing today, I think this week, former U.S. Army Colonel Douglas Macgregor saying the Ukrainian states will be finished off by Russian forces in the next few weeks. But I think we also have to look at Russia and Putin with a critical eye. And there's others saying Russia is not doing well. It's bungling. It's weak. You had the Kherson pullouts, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Russia is playing some long game. But if we do look at history with Napoleon and Hitler, they did sort of play the long game, and they won. And just your thoughts on how with this pullout of Kherson and just how things are going and how this might end. I mean, it seems like do you think the West wants to escalate to World War III? I mean, I think they are crazy enough. NATO. It seems like they keep running these false flag ops, the Ukrainian missiles in Poland and the Nord Stream and Kerch Bridge. So we've got all of these false flag operations. It's like they're trying to start World War III. But thoughts on that, but as well, how do you see Russia doing, and how are they going to get out of this?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'll say that, I came here in 2014. I joined the Army. I served for a year, 2014, 2015, served for, half a year in 2017 on the front as a trigger pulling soldier, shooting and getting shot at every day, every night. And, the first thing that I'll say is that, and this whole time since till February 2022, from 2014, Western propagandists were saying, oh, well, the Russians invaded Ukraine, they're occupying Donbass and stuff, which is an absolute lie. The Russians helped us out with some ammo, with some financial support, with some instructors, but there was no organized Russian military units in Donbass until, February of this year, And in those 8 years before that, it was the Donbass People's Militia that held the line, that didn't retreat one step. Slavyansk in 2014 under Gherkin, known as Strelkov, which there's a lot of controversy about that dude to this day. But he was a Russian officer. He's the one that ordered the retreat. He wasn't from Donbass. The guys who have stood on the line for the last 8 years are defending their own homes, their own families. They understand it'll be a Nazi genocide like the German Nazis did if the line breaks, if the Ukravs come in. And, so there's no surrender, there's no retreating. And we held that line for 8 years. And now, all of a sudden, and the Russians had to come in. The plan was for a major assault. They had 120,000 Ukravs on the Donbass front, which is about 200 miles, from one end to the other. And they were getting ready to make a major assault. People have to understand, I'm sitting right now in the center of the city in downtown Donetsk, and to the Ukraine positions, it's less than 10 miles. The city limit is the front line. And, you can drive 10 miles in a tank in an hour. So if they break through the line, they can get right here to the center of town. And that was their plan, because they tried in 2014 to go around the cities and cut off the border, and they got smashed by artillery and Grad rockets and like that. So this time their plan was to come straight into the middle of the cities and then use the civilian population, which Donetsk has probably 750,000 people in it today, So that's a lot of civilians, dense, built up urban area. They get in there, and then that neutralizes Russia's main military advantages, which are its rocket power, its artillery power, and its air power that the Ukrainians can't really match. But if the Ukrainian army is in the middle of a densely packed city, that stuff don't work, And so we have defended Donetsk. The Russians knew ahead of time that this operation was planned to do exactly that, assault into the cities in the first week of March. And they came in, rode in like the cavalry at the very last minute, but they had to. They had no choice, or they would have been sitting here watching, Nazi-style slaughter, right on their own border. And the plans were, in fact, for the Ukrainian army to go further than Donbass, to go into like Rostov and back into Crimea, and to go into actual Russian cities after that, And so they had to do it. We're glad that the Russians came in. They, for some reason, and there's only two reasons, and it's either, abject stupidity and utter incompetence, or else, it's dudes in the highest part of the Russian military that don't want to win, that are trying to prevent Russia from winning. And there's been, some major screw ups that, a basic, that a dude on an airsoft squad should know military tactics, and strategy, that got done exactly the worst possible way that they could be done. And so people here are starting to wondering, if Russia was really serious, they could have finished this thing up by June, but they didn't, and so there's a lot of worries about this. Kherson was not the first big retreat. It was about the fourth big retreat. And in these places where they come in, they say, hey, Russia's here. They start giving out human aid. They start giving people jobs. They start telling the teachers, teach Russian curriculum. They start saying, hey, dude, you can be the mayor. And then they leave, and then the UCROPs come back in, and it's death squad time, and it's, there's been more than enough proof of it already that the UCROP Nazis are posting of, themselves, of them slaughtering civilians, collaborators, they call them, and also prisoners of war. But that don't get shown at all in the West, and people, if they want to know the truth, they have to, work for it a little bit. In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. And you know what? And that's the thing. It's, the worst liar that there is the one who lies to themselves. Because if they lie to themselves, everything they say and everything they do is a lie, And like, I had someone very, very close to me had a master's degree in philosophy from the University of Texas, studied the love of knowledge and wisdom. I tried to talk to her about WTC 7 falling at free fall speed into its own footprint, and me being a demolition specialist trained by the U.S. Army. I'm like, I can tell you that it's like, it's like if you put your car in reverse, it's not going forward. There's only one way that a building can fall like that. And she said, this philosopher said this sentence, these exact words, bro. She said, I don't want to know. I don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, dude. It's cowardice. It's convenience. It's choosing to be stupid. And those who acquiesce to evil are also evil.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. It's cowardice. People can't face this level of evil that we're dealing with globally. And just on Ukraine, Russia has taken back the 4 regions, and where do you see things going? Like, we're just at some point waiting for a peace agreement where things will
look,
end.
man, it's like
things will end here, or do you think that
no. I mean, Russia cannot afford to take, say if you draw a line from Chernobyl, which is just west of Kiev on the Belarus border, down to the northern tip of Moldova. It's further west than the Dnieper River. And that's how much Russia, in my opinion, has to take, because they need the buffer zone for security and stuff like that. There's no way that they can take and hold Western Ukraine, which is, just a ball of Nazi maggots there. They've been brainwashed there since before the Second World War. That would make, occupation of Iraq or Afghanistan look like a picnic, So they don't have to take that, but they have to take Kiev. Their stated goals: denazification, demilitarization. That can't happen without regime change. That can't happen without taking Kiev. So they're going to take it, dude. The idea of Ukraine beating Russia in a war, it's like saying, New Zealand beating Australia, or Mexico beating the United States, or Canada beating the United States. It ain't going to happen. They're whatever the problem was before, they've now understood that it's an existential fight. It's victory or death. Putin has been around long enough that, he knows people that died in the Great Patriotic War. He knows what Nazism really is. He ain't going to be having it on his doorstep. And they're starting, and people talk about the long game, the economic, the political, like that. And those are real wars too, the information war, the economic war. As Michael Parenti famously said, economic violence is just physical violence in slow motion. But as we remember from Madeleine Albright, you can kill 500,000 Iraqi kids just with economic violence, So, and they're winning the economic war. They're doing better now, and they're doing okay in the information war. And they understand, I think, finally, that they must win the military war, because if they lose the military war, if they get their ass whipped in Ukraine, they lose all credibility. There's a danger. You look at Turkey, and he's, Erdogan, you talk about a greasy, swindling motherfucker. He's, excuse my language, but, he's everybody's friend, and whoever pays him the best, he does what they say. So you can't trust him. Even the Chinese. If the Chinese see Russia as weak, they will not be an ally. So Russia has to show their strength in front of China, because, the thing is, it's like Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan and all these, Americans going to China. They're like, look, dude, you don't have to do anything. Just sit here. We're going to kick the Russians' ass in Ukraine, and then we're going to start taking over Russia. You can have the eastern half. You can have Siberia. It'll be like that. Well, and of course, who would be stupid enough to trust the Americans? But it's a pretty sweet sounding deal for the Chinese. And there's work and risk involved in them maintaining political and economic and military alliances with Russia, So Russia has to show that they're strong, that they're not chumps, that they're not ate up with traitors, that they're not cowards, that, when it comes down to, the fight, they can hold their own, that they don't get ass whipped by, New Zealand or, like that. So hopefully, and I do believe that Russia's waiting for the winter. And I do believe that, of course, I believed that, by the June of this year, Russia was going to be in Kiev and holding the war crimes trials, and they should have been, dude. They should have been, and they can be, and I think they will be, at least I think that by June of 2023, unless there's a nuclear exchange, and that's another thing too, bro. And I'm one of the guys that broke the story about the plan for the dirty bomb that the UCROPs were going to say was a nuclear tactical nuke and stuff. And that was also absolutely real, dude. They've used chemical weapons, they've used radioactive material just to, give radiation sickness to soldiers on the borders. They've used biological weapons. They're every dirty trick in the book, man. They're absolutely capable of, without concern of the consequences, on the global stage, as long as it makes America and the people who own America stronger. So Russia had to come in. I think they've now finally decided to quit, fiddling around. And I think they're going to kick some hard ass, and it's going to be, Russia in Kiev by June. I hope so, because if not, if they fail to take the military initiative, which they don't have right now, by the way, people are starting to say, hey, man, Russia's getting their ass kicked and stuff like that. And you can't say no, dude, when they're retreating from 4 major areas, when the UCROP army is still 10 miles from the center of Donetsk, when we don't have water here in Donetsk now, for a while since the operation started, the UCROP started bombing the water filtration, water pumping stations. And, for the last couple of months, it's been like water rationing,
I think
different.
I've heard Russian troops will be coming online soon, no? Like 100, 200,000.
Yeah, like 300,000, but troops are only as good as the generals who command them, and, their leaders, all the way down to the squad level. My friends, and almost all my friends are on the front right now, almost every single one of them. And they're not happy with the Russian command structure. They say, for example, these are guys that are 8-year veterans of war, twice as long as World War II, front line, 25, 28 days a month. These are experts. These are some of the best soldiers in the world, the DPR army. And then Russia sends in some shave-tail lieutenant straight out of the academy. He's going to come in and start, with all, shiny boots, and he's going to come in and start telling these expert veterans, what to do. And my friend, he's like, and the thing is, all these krasavchiks, all these pretty boy lieutenants, they all got iPhones. And the iPhone, you can't transfer the document from iPhone, like a map, for instance, something very important. The guy's like, okay, I order you to take this hill. Okay, send me the map. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have an iPhone? And it's just, it's like that, dude. In 2017, when I was on the front, the Russians started coming in, like kind of taking command of some of the higher up decisions in 2017 on the front lines. If the UCROPs start shooting at you or even start attacking your base, you have to call the commander and ask for permission to fire back. And then your commander has to call, the Russian co-commander, who's probably at some fancy restaurant with a couple of his girlfriends, in, Pushkin Boulevard in Donetsk, and get permission from the Russian. And then the commander can call back and say, okay, you can start shooting. If he doesn't reach the Russian commander, he can't say okay. And so, and it was the Russian idea, bro. Oh, when you go to the front, we're going to count how many rounds you have. And when you come back, we're going to count how many rounds you have. And if you have less than you went with, we'll put your ass in jail. So there's some real legitimate criticism, from these round counting iPhone pretty boys, and all the way up to the way it's been conducted at the general staff level. You know, I mean, it's legitimate, and Russia they must change the course of this war if they want to survive. Because, okay, Kherson just fell. That was a disgrace. That was a debacle. The next target for the Ukrainian army is the ZNPP, the nuclear power base. If they take that, and the nuclear power plant is 100 miles from Kherson. They're already moving all the dudes that they built up for the attack on Kherson. They're moving to Zaporozhye now. You know, and it's across the river, and it'll be a tough crossing. But D-Day was a tough crossing too. You know, and if they take the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, they're gonna, you know, just like, you know, we say, oh, General Armageddon, he's cutting off the power in Lvov and Kiev. If they take that power plant, they can do a lot of that stuff right here to us too, you know. And then if they take that power plant, it's 100 miles to Donetsk from there, dude. And as I've said since 2015, as goes Donetsk, so goes the world, bro. Because if Donetsk falls, Russia loses all credibility. They lose. If they lose Donetsk, they lose this war, dude.
Would you say if that happens, so if Russia succeeds, then we're on our way to the multipolar world, but if they fail, there won't be much of the multipolar world?
Yeah, dude. I mean, because the thing is, and you know what? I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I've always been a very spiritual guy. I do absolutely believe that this is a battle of evil against the future of humanity, and it is that, dude. I mean, Russia is the country that's standing up against the New World Order and the Great Reset and all that stuff. I mean, and of course, they've kind of collaborated in some ways, like with the COVID virus and stuff like that, which also brings a lot of questions from people here. I mean, we never really played that shit here, dude. I mean, it was like, you know, I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw anybody wearing a mask around here, you know. And I mean, even in the time, you know, people, I mean, like, you'd go in the grocery store and do all your shopping, and then you had to put the mask on, like when you were paying at the cashier, you know. And I mean, so I mean, it's weird, and that's the thing, dude, because when the best, most patriotic people in all of Russia, which is the people of Donbass, start wondering what's going on, if they can really trust the Kremlin, then the Kremlin needs to prove by their actions. Because with every politician in the world, everywhere in the world, dude, what they say means nothing. It means nothing. What they do says everything. You know, so, you know, if the Ukrops come to Donetsk, you know, I have my...
You're ready.
I have AK-47. I got a bulletproof vest. I got a pistol too. You know, I'll sell my life, not cheaply. You know, remember the Alamo and all that. You know, but if the Ukrops come into Donetsk, I don't really want to live. I don't want to see what happens after that. You know, so I'll go out fighting. But you know, if Russia has to win in Ukraine in order to protect itself, and if it doesn't, then, you know, all the dreams of the multipolar world go down the drain, because then, you know, the devil dude comes in, he's like, hey, I'll pay off the presidents, we kill this one, we pay that one. But as long as there's Russia and it's strong enough and it's taking care of its business, which means making sure Donetsk stays alive, then there's hope, bro.
Right. Yeah, it's a really, you know, I feel like we're in the 1930s again. We're at historical.
We are, bro.
Crossroads.
We really are, dude. And it's, you know, all the Nazis that got away, that the Catholic Church and the CIA and the MI6 helped to escape and put in positions of political and military and intelligence power, you know, 80 years ago. I mean, Chrystia Freeland, you know, the son of, or the daughter of, or the son or the daughter, I don't know exactly which, of, or granddaughter of the, you know, a genuine Ukrainian Nazi collaborator, you know, Banderisti propagandist, Nazi propagandist, who got away and went to Canada, you know, and now she's, you know, the de facto head. You know, I mean, she's got more balls than Trudeau, so
they,
you know,
they
she's
might
called the shots.
they're talking about her as head of NATO. So there you go. You know,
There you go, Bruce.
and even I've had on Eve Engler, the Canadian activist, where he writes in depth about her. But and any final then thought for us?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so people in the West need to take responsibility for the world, for their own self-interest, that of their children, for the interest of their souls. You know, we can't save the world. It's not our job to save the world. Our job is to save our own souls by trying to save the world, by doing what's good, by telling the truth, you know, by not being stupid and lazy and not caring what happens to people besides yourself. And so people, and the first step on that road is to, you know, be educated enough to understand what reality really is, you know, to be able to think critically. The propaganda is overwhelming. They're cutting it off, you know, right and left, which goes to show, you know, who's telling the truth and who's lying. You know, in an open society, and I don't mean a George Soros open society, but people can consider the ideas. You know, I mean, somebody that spouts off Nazism or something, as long as there's an equal, you know, coverage of the other side, that guy's always going to lose, dude, because he's an idiot and asshole. They got their asses kicked in 1945, you know, and that's what always happens and what deserves to happen to guys like that, you know. But people these days, I mean, first of all, you got to get on like alternative media, you know, like TNT radio is good. You know, there's some good alternative information that's still out there that isn't co-opted. It isn't lies and propaganda. Telegram. There's Telegram, which is the Russian version of Twitter, pretty much. You know, it's the new thing. It's the new platform without censorship, without getting, you know, people getting kicked off, and you can find a lot of real news there, particularly about the Russian-Ukrainian war that you can't find anywhere else, dude. I mean, Frontline. I have a channel on Telegram. It's got, you know, 15,000 subscribers, something like that. But I mean, so it ain't big, but this is, you know, my channel is the perspective of a veteran of this war who's here on the ground, you know, next to the shelling, going to collect the water, seeing what the prices are, seeing what the Russians are doing, all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, as frontline as you can get. You know, I don't have to go, you know, be like, you know, some of these dudes with the vest and the helmet and the microphone. I don't have to go to the front line. I'm already on the front line, dude. I can hear shelling all day long, dude. When I go to my house in Petrovsky, I made a video there recently. In 7 minutes in my backyard, I counted 53 artillery shells going both ways, right over my house, dude. So that's as front as you know, I mean, unless you got your own gun with you, you know, that's about as front as you want to go. So Telegram is excellent. There's VKontakte also, which is like the Russian version of Facebook. I'm on there too. I got about 10,000 subscribers there. You know, I mean, there's like 600 million people. A lot of people that speak English are there now. I mean, Facebook, you know, I mean, and of course I was fortunate enough for them to kick me off, so I can say it now, but because I'm not on it, and I would probably still be on it if they hadn't kicked me off, just because it was another important platform for me. But you know, Facebook is, I mean, it's completely a spy operation. They read everything, they give everything to the NSA or whoever else wants it. I mean, it's propaganda. It's ludicrously censored. You know, I mean, even before they kicked me off, I mean, for the last couple of years I was on there, dude, it was like, you know, I'd get on for a week, 30-day ban, come back at the end of 30 days, maybe a week if I was lucky before the next one, you know what I mean? So, you know, you get kicked off for telling the truth there. So, VContact, VK as it's called, you can look it up. That's an excellent alternative. Telegram is the best information alternative right now. You know, not just for about the Ukraine-Russian war, but I mean, like, you know, everything about like the vaccine, about everything. It doesn't get censored, bro.
And apart from your VK and Telegram, I follow you there on both platforms. You've got RussellTexasBentley.org and DonbassHumeAid.com. You know, are those good websites for people to visit?
Yes. The .org. I mean, my website, I haven't really been updating recently, but that is my most. There's .org. There's RussellTexasBentley.com. That's my old one that I somehow got locked out of back 2 years ago. Then I got RussellTexasBentley.org, and then I got RussellTexasBentley.info. So, I mean, they're still up. There's some good stuff at that first one.com. Some of my old stuff, if anybody's looking for stuff about the historical perspective from, say, 2015 to 19. Donbass Human Aid is a 501c3 registered charity in the United States. People can, 100% legit, 100% legal. People can donate to that and deduct it from their taxes. And we've done, you know, some really good work since 2015. I was a co-founder since the operation started because people started, going to the offices and the church and stuff like that that's working with us in the United States and like threatening them, saying, oh, you're with Tejas Bentley, the terrorist and stuff. So I've kind of separated myself away from it, but I can guarantee you that there's nobody that's making any money. Nobody gets paid. It's all volunteers, and 100% of everything that goes to Donbass Human Aid goes to help people here, mainly kids, schools, orphanages, people whose homes have been bombed, people who have been wounded by shelling, you know, stuff like that. Dude, it's really, the best organization that you can contribute to for, you know, helping, you know, totally non-military, peaceful, totally legal, you know, ways to contribute to help victims of this war.
All right. All the links are in the description, your VK, Telegram, these websites and so forth. And so, you know, the crazy times that we live in Texas, I hope the Ukrainians don't make it to where you are and that, you know, Russia holds the line. But thank you for being on Geopolitics and Empire, and Godspeed, Russell.
Thank you too, my brother.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast. The website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and I encourage you to sign up to the free email list that notifies you of every new podcast and other important updates. The email list and website are our last lines of defense. We're being censored and deplatformed. It's almost impossible to find Geopolitics and Empire on the Google search engine. We've been blacklisted. YouTube frequently strikes videos. Facebook restricts our page. Reddit, Twitter, and LinkedIn take down posts. After the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire in a 2021 article co-written with NATO, or the Atlantic Council, our Patreon account was terminated. Vimeo also terminated our Pro account at one point. In April of 2022, the Department of Homeland Security had PayPal ban us for life. The best free way to help Geopolitics and Empire is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere and subscribe to all of our media channels. You can find the video broadcast now on 5 platforms: Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. You can find the audio broadcast on the entire podcast ecosystem: SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and so on. My current favorite social media channels are Twitter and Telegram, but you can also find us on Gab, MeWe, Minds, Float, VK, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can support this guerrilla signal by donating via DonorBox, Buy Me a Coffee, Subscribestar, or Crypto. You can purchase a consultation with the host to talk about expatriation, geopolitics, or podcasting. You can also become a monthly or annual member via Stripe and receive benefits such as partaking in a monthly member Zoom call, get access to a weekly recording of my random thoughts, and a private Telegram channel. Thank you for listening.